So, yeah, so hi, here we are with Luke Wieland. Hi,
Hi, how you going?
good. How are you? What's up?
Good.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah, you are in Australia, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
In
so,
South Wales.
yeah. So we've been in touch for a while online, and I don't know so much about your story with the NKT, not so much, a little bit, you told me. And so we thought we would have this conversation now, and also just exchange maybe experiences about the NKT. And, my personal objective with these videos is really just warn people who are thinking of joining, because those who are already in, it's a difficult thing to get anybody out. I mean, unless one realizes by themselves, that they need to get out. There's not much you can do, actually. But there are a lot of people who have no idea about the NKT. They're looking, they're sincere searchers for some kind of answer, whatever, spiritual answer to their issues or problems, whatever, and they bump into the NKT simply because it's so easy to bump into them, at least in my experience. That there's just so much marketing going on. So I was thinking to spread this information that we have about the NKT, to warn people to think twice,
Yes,
three times, 100 times. So look,
definitely.
what would you say here in terms of like somebody who's thinking of joining the NKT?
Hmm. I think one thing that I didn't do was I didn't check out the group prior to sort of getting involved. And I think that's one thing that I've learned now is before you just go along to something, you should, check out other people's point of views, do a little bit of research before you go and put yourself fully into it. So I would suggest that people, if they encounter like an NKT leaflet or a poster in a shopping center or something like that, that they just do a general search and get some background information on what the NKT is in their past and what what they've been up to in recent years. And of course, it wouldn't take very long before that person would see that they are a pretty sectarian group. And of course, the controversy that they cause with the Dalai Lama is there. And it wouldn't take very much for someone to start seeing all that come up in their research.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't do that research either when I first went there. And I remember my first time there, very, very super first time. And the teacher pointed out Kelsang Gyatso's photo on, I don't know if this happened to you. Um, they pointed out Kelsang Gyatso's photo on the altar, on the Gompa, whatever it's called. And I had this immediate visceral reaction to that photo. I was like, oh my God, and I literally
Very
had to just silence. Do you have any, what was your first experience like in the center?
So I actually started attending classes at a local library and also at a local like a town hall because that's where I found them. I found their advertisement dropped in my letterbox. There was a leaflet about classes that were happening in these different locations away from the center. And I thought I'd go along and check it out, and I did. And the class was pretty straightforward. About how to be less anxious, how to overcome anxiety, and how to always be happy. And even then, I thought it's kind of,
That's what the leaflet said. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
that it'd be a
Okay.
meditation class and it'd be a guided class. And I think the cost was only like $10. So I thought, why not? I'll go along and check it out. And it's interesting. I look back on it now and think, why didn't I question this part of it? But actually, when I went into the first lesson, as you walk in the door, there's someone there trying to force you to buy books, buy little Buddha statues, buy pictures of Kelsang Gyatso. And I thought, that's looking back, and I thought that's a really weird thing to do, isn't it? It's like, you sort of coerce me to buy all this material, and I've only just got in the door. Um,
Right.
so I did the class, and I wouldn't say I got much benefit out of it. I just kind of felt more relaxed, that I was doing some breathing meditation, things like that. And what I've come to realize too is these things you can do at home by yourself. You don't really need to. Sure, you might go along once and learn the technique, and then after that, you don't have to go back. You can just do these things yourself. Because you're just sitting there really relaxing your mind.
Yeah.
Um, And so after that, I kept going to those kind of classes, drop-in classes, they call them, on and off for about 3 years. But then when the pandemic hit, I had plenty of free time. And, I was a person that was looking for answers. I've always been a seeker and I still am a seeker. I'm always interested and always asking questions. Um, I'm my mum sometimes says, "Oh, just give it all up. Why you're never satisfied?" I'm like, "No, I want to know everything. I have a very curious mind." Um, and so from there, the NKT on the leaflets, actually, when you go to class in these classes that are outside the center, they put leaflets on your chair. And then I saw this leaflet saying that they were holding a Tantra Empowerment. And I was like, well, what's that? And they said, oh, Tantra is really great because it's a fast track to enlightenment. You can get enlightened in one lifetime. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds fantastic. Who wouldn't want that? And then I started going to the center just before COVID because
So
I had
then
plenty of free.
did you have the Tantra Empowerment then, or?
Yeah, so I started attending the drop-in classes there to sort of just adjust, see what the center was like. I met some people that, we connected and got along well. And so I thought, I made some friends and I thought, well, I'll keep going, I'll just put myself into the center full time for all my classes. And I was encouraged to do that, come to the center. It's great. There's tea, there's coffee. Um, and the community was there. So that's why I started going there. And then a few months later, I took the Tantra Empowerment. And that was my first
So
Tantra Empowerment.
so at this point, when you took the Tantra Empowerment, how long had you been going to classes, or how would you describe your progress on the Buddhist path when you took these empowerments?
Yeah, that's what I found interesting is I don't think I progressed on the path very much. It was kind of just the same. The classes were all the same, just the same stuff being repeated over and over again. It gets really boring and mundane. They're sort of sitting there spoon feeding you and showing you Kelsang Gyatso's book and always talking about how great Kelsang Gyatso is. And of course, more than half of them have never met them and they never will. Because at that time he was still alive, but as you know, he's since passed away, I think last year or the year
Yeah,
before. Yeah.
22, I think. Yeah.
And so no, I don't think I progressed on anything really. And that's I think what made me want to take the Tantra Empowerment is I thought, this is going nowhere. And maybe Tantra, the way that they've sold it to me and presented it to me would be, something new.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that was my experience as well, that I went to the classes, but at the end of the day, I was always thinking, oh my God, like what did I actually learn here? I mean, and then, yeah, there was a lot of repetition. And
Yeah.
there was nothing that I could not just Google in and find out about in 10 minutes time. And yet I would have to just go to the center, pay all this money, stay all this time. It's just like a hugely um, time consuming thing for me. And also what I didn't understand was that the teachers always just repeated what was in the book. So I didn't quite get the point of that. Like, if you just repeat what's in the book, then what is the point of doing these events? Like, you can just read the book, and it would have been even it would have made even more sense to give little homework assignments to the students, read this chapter and then come back. We'll talk about it together, we'll discuss it together, we'll see where it leads us. But no, it was just always like repeating the same phrases that were already in the book. And the classes were also pretty much the same. And I felt like I was not progressing at all. And the classes were pretty boring. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
my experience as well. So then you took the Tantra Empowerment, actually. You did take it, and did that change
And
anything for you? Yeah? Sorry.
I I think that's actually when I took the Tantra Empowerment, that's when I sort of started to see a lot of the cracks in the NKT.
Mhm.
So first, the Tantra Empowerment was very expensive.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and it was over 2 days. Um, and I was a bit upset at the fact that I think I paid almost $200 for the Tantra Empowerment. And it was just what they call in the Vajrayana a lower Tantra Empowerment. So it's not like a high level practice, it's very basic. And so we went through the empowerment, and I thought, and I started to feel like I was being a bit tricked because with an empowerment, that's a really big step to take. And while the NKT are always talking about Geshe Kelsang Gyatso, they, with the Tantra empowerment, by putting you through that, they, without telling you, they're locking you in with Kelsang Gyatso. Because of course you have to visualize the guru, and when they, I found it interesting that when they were sitting on the throne, the teacher was sitting on the throne giving the empowerment. He said, "Now just visualize your spiritual guide coming in front of you and bestowing the empowerment. And if you don't have a spiritual guide, that's okay. You can just visualize Kelsang Gyatso, who is our spiritual guide." And I thought, well, hang on, that's not right, because instead you should be,
No.
even before this, you should be telling those people that are coming for the empowerment, like maybe doing a workshop, that you have complete freedom to pick your own spiritual guide, your own guru. You can't just have people throw someone into a tantra empowerment with no knowledge and automatically
No.
sign them up Sangyatso to be their guru. That's just wrong.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the Vajrayana is against that, your spiritual guide, your guru, is someone that you have to find yourself and feel connected to. No one can just throw it on you so abruptly like that.
Exactly.
So when we did the,
Did I mention that even the Buddha Shakyamuni could be your spiritual guide, that you could visualize him? Yeah, you see,
uh,
that's
so you can imagine that when you're sitting there in that such short time of, very small period of, space and time as the empowerment's beginning, and you get to this stage, um, you feel quite trapped. I mean, who do you visualize? And then they tell you, if you have no one, just visualize Kelsang Gyatso. And you think, oh, no, no, no. I know nothing about him. I've never met him. I don't know if he meets the qualities of a real guru or anything like that. And that's where people
yeah,
have to be very wary and be very careful with NKT empowerments, is that they're tricking you into something that you might have no knowledge of, and that's very dangerous.
Absolutely. I That's such an important point that you've raised, that you also raised it as a personal experience. Um, I have always avoided the tantric empowerment because I'm a cheapskate. I never wanted to pay the money, honestly. I just felt that no way am I going to shell out hundreds of euros for something like this. So I kind of escaped that. But yeah, we always talk about this in our group on Facebook, exposing the new Kadampa tradition, that there is no preparation. So people have no idea what is Vajrayana. They have no idea of what Tantra is. When they go into these empowerments, they have no idea of what they're doing. In term on a spiritual level. And yeah, it is one of the major issues, I think, with the NKT as far as the spiritual part, because there are many issues with the NKT, but there are these spiritual issues. Like if somebody is seriously looking into Buddhism and looking for uh, uh, mm, looking for a Buddhist path, this is one very serious issue, I think, with the NKT.
Yeah.
So you survived the tantric empowerment, and did you visualize Kelsang Gyatso, or by the way,
Um,
they call him Geshe-la. I'm saying this to our viewers that Kelsang Gyatso is referred to as Geshe-la because they say, as if he was a Geshe, but he's not really a Geshe. We know that, but anyway, that's just a side note. Sorry, I interrupted.
and it's an important thing that people should know as well, is he never completed his Geshe exams. He was actually expelled from his monastery
Yeah,
for being very disobedient, which isn't a good thing for a Buddhist monk or any Buddhist in general. It's not a good, not very virtuous to be a rebel and be verbally abusive and cause friction inside monasteries, which is what he did. He was
yeah,
of a very sectarian mind frame,
yeah,
which led to being expelled. Yeah. And then unfortunately he came to the West and continued
yeah,
on.
yeah. He was sent to the West to teach beginning students. They thought he would be good for people who were just starting out on the Buddhist path. And
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's part of history. But anyway, the point is, he is not a geshe. He does not have a geshe degree. Is a little bit like a PhD in Western terms. Yeah, so it's a very high level uh, degree in Tibet, and it's like saying I have a PhD in whatever, and I don't. Maybe I just have a bachelor's degree or something, but I go
Yeah.
around parading as a PhD. So
That's
basically,
right.
that's what it means. So we just call him Geshe. We don't call him Geshe. We call him Kelsang Cat. So okay,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
so. What
Yeah.
happened after the empowerment? What did anything change for you, or
The only thing that changed was that I now felt extremely overburdened with doing a whole heap of prayers every day. So that's another thing that the NKT don't inform people enough, is that when you take an empowerment, you then have daily commitments to that empowerment, like doing the prayers and the meditations, which they call a sadhana. And along with that too, I had to do the Guru Yoga of Kelsang Gyatso, where you visualize Kelsang Gyatso, dissolving into you, and which is very creepy.
yeah? Oh my
And then,
God, yeah,
yeah, yeah. And then after that, you solicit the Shugden spirit. You start sort of like asking the Shugden spirit to help you on the path to destroy all obstacles and make all conditions very good for you to practice the Dharma and that was very overwhelming because the Shugden daily practice in the NKT, which they call Heart Jewel, is really extensive. After you get through the Guru Yoga where you dissolve Kelsang Gyatso into you, the second part is the worship of the Shugden, which is, pretty full on if you have a full-time, scheduled day-to-day life. It's hard to fit that in. But of course, the NKT tell you that if you don't, you'll suffer the consequences of calamities falling on you. Your Dharma won't be pure. You won't see any results of your Dharma. You should just do heaps of Shugden as much as possible.
So this
And
is
then on
all
top of that,
stuff they tell you after the empowerment, not before.
before, no, which is really bad. And then so after that, I felt trapped because I had this Guru Yoga, I had the Shugden spirit, and then I had the Prajna Paramita empowerment that I took. So I had all these prayers that I had to do, and if I didn't, I would be breaking my samaya, and I would end up in a Vajra hell if I didn't keep up with these commitments. So I was very demanding.
Oh my
And of
God,
course,
yeah.
after the empowerment, I had so many questions because during the empowerment, they don't prepare you at all for it. So when you're hit with all this after the empowerment, it's very overwhelming. And then, and then I think too, it's also a tactic of theirs because you'll keep coming back to the center to ask questions. So that's sort of how they get you in the door and keep you in the door because you're
Wow.
lumbered with all this and you're trying to understand it. All you have is them. So they put you in a position where you're reliant on them, which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate. Yeah. And so that's how from then on, I became really involved in the center from that point onwards because I felt locked in. There was just no way out.
I see. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there is this thing about Shugden, which is a tremendous thing. I mean, people in the West, they have no idea who Shugden is. Obviously, they don't do the research before the tantric empowerment to find out what they're actually committing to. But Shugden was this mm, personage in Tibetan Buddhism that protected the Gelug sect. So it was a sect protector, right? So Shugden originally was someone who would, yes, punish people who veered away from the Gelug yellow hat teachings, right? And would impart horrible punishments on practitioners who even just read or thought about other traditions and other teachers that did not belong to the Gelug tradition. So that's the original Shugden. And then the NKT took this personage and transformed it into this this other personage, which I don't really want to go into it now. But I remember when I was involved in the NKT, there was this one episode where my teacher said, he pointed this woman out to me who had, had terrible acne. She had terrible acne. We just saw her on the street, and he said, she used to come to the center. She used to come to the center. Uh, and then at that time, she was still beautiful. She didn't have any skin problems. But once she left and she stopped coming and she left the NKT, she got this horrible acne on her face. And at that time, and he didn't mention Shugden actually, but I didn't understand the connection. Like, why was he telling me this? Like, why was he talking about this stuff? You know, why was he telling me this? And later on, I put it, you know, it together. I put it together, and I understood that he was probably referring to a Shugden punishment, you know, for this woman for leaving the NKT. So this is, I think, an important point that you're raising here. This is another thing that we have to emphasize. When you're going
Yeah.
into the NKT, you have no idea what you are going into. You really
That's right.
don't.
No, no.
And and I think it can be traumatizing for a lot of people, because a lot of people do believe in these, what's the word, you know, in these kinds of things. Yeah. These superstitious kind of thing. And it's very easy to believe in these things. Yeah. I mean, I would believe in them too if I had taken the empowerment and everything. I would feel terrible about not doing certain things or doing certain things, because Shugden is like watching, right?
Yeah.
And has this
Yeah.
power of punishment, or realizing your desires. Even, you know, people in the NKT pray to Shugden for getting a better job or whatever. It's like completely ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, they sort of around, yeah, to do
Yeah.
things for them.
So you started going to the center more because you felt a little bit, mm,
Yeah, I felt pretty locked in. So after the empowerment, I kept going back and I kept asking questions because I wanted to learn about what actually is Tantra. Now that I've taken this Tantra empowerment, what is Tantra? And of course, they'd say, oh, buy this book of Kelsang Gyatso. He talks about Tantra. So I would buy the book and I would study the book. I would take it home in my free time. Even on the bus, I'd pull it open and read it. In all my free time, I would read his books. And so I started reading his books on Tantra, and I would meet up with the teacher and we'd talk about certain meanings that were in the book, where Kelsang Gyatso talks about, you know, the deity yoga and emptiness and things like that. Um, and that's another thing I think people should be aware of too, is the NKT, the way they teach emptiness is very distorted from what emptiness actually is in Buddhism. So they talk about dissolving yourself into nothingness. They talk about objects being there, but they're not actually there. It's a magic trick. Um, it's, you know, they say that it's not actually there, you're just delusional. The Buddha didn't teach that. The Buddha taught that, you know, emptiness is really what is the existence of this mobile phone, for example? How did it come into existence? You know, what is, I won't go into too much detail because it's a pretty big topic, but all this stuff of pretending that you're disappearing into space and you're not really there, it's just an illusion, is an emptiness. And
right.
it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous because people develop, you know, disassociation disorders. There are stories of people in the NKT that after the NKT trains them up in this meditation, where they're meant to sit and pretend that they're not really there, they don't exist, and that they dissolve into space. There are stories of people, you know, sort of going, oh, when they come out of the meditation, you know, they're shocked that they actually have a body. They're quite scared of themselves because, and that's a disassociation disorder that they're developing. You know, it's very dangerous and it's not
Yeah,
emptiness at all. Yeah. So
exactly.
it's very sad. Um, but yes, I kept going to the center, and then one day I went to the center, and there was a lady there, and she was resigning from her role as the as an administrator. She mainly did the website duties, all volunteer, of course. Um, she managed the website for the NKT, and that's a pretty big job. Um,
Mhm.
and so she was there resigning, and one of the teacher, my resident teacher, turned to me and said, "Oh, hey, Luke, would you like to take on the role of the centre's website administrator? And if you do, you'll get really good karma." And I was like, okay, good karma sounds good. I want some good karma. So I said, okay, sure. And I didn't realize just how huge that workload was. And it was very, very overwhelming. I was sometimes up till 2 o'clock in the morning doing all their events and setting up their payment schedule. They're like their payment platforms, their booking links. Um, was very full on. It was a full-time job.
Wow.
And at the time, I also had myself, I just landed a full-time job. So I was inundated with NKT, just free work for them. And it was around the clock. And the resident teacher, he would often play games with me with that. So he would tell me to do one thing and I'd go and do it and post it up on the website. And then he'd say, "Oh, you did it all wrong. Take it all down."
Oh my God.
Oh, I did everything you told me to do. And he did that to me constantly. He would
Why
sort
did
of
he do that? Why? Why do you think he was doing that? Was it a power
think
game or
I think to deliberately put me under psychological pressure. Yeah.
yeah, it was a
To
power game, yeah?
power game, yeah. And I think to control me, to
Yeah.
see how he pushed me to, I think, to be honest, I think he was trying to find what my weak spots were just in myself so he could capitalize that and use it against me. Yeah. So he
Wow.
was the whole time I did things, the website for them, he was never satisfied with anything. And it would be little things. Oh, the font is too small. Now the font is too big. Now you should go and change the font to how it originally was. And I'd be like, oh my God, you just complained that it was too small and now you want it back. Never satisfied with anything.
So how long did you do this job for them?
I did it for about a year.
Wow. What was it
Very,
that in under these conditions you still kept doing it? How would you describe? Okay, so there was this psychological manipulation that started years before and went to the tantric empower. I think the tantric empowerment is an important point here. Maybe I don't know. You tell me, but I think that's where a lot of people kind of lose it, like lose that control that they may have had before. Like you said, after the tantric empowerment, you felt like constrained to go and do more. But what is it that, like, how do you see this issue? Like, what was it that made you just stick with this kind of situation that was obviously not that um, positive for you? What made you stick for a year with this?
um, and looking, it's sad to say, but I was absolutely scared of them. I was scared of the resident teacher because I was controlled by fear. I mean, sometimes when I'd ask him questions, he'd lose his temper. And and even when I would ask him questions about tantra, I used to see him get really, that his vein would be popping in the middle of his forehead, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, this is really escalating. But I'm only asking simple questions. And I kind of got that demeanor from him. He was a very strange individual, um, a very hard person to figure out, but at the same time, incredibly narcissistic. If you had any complaint, he just said, "Oh, you don't have enough faith.
Yeah, that's
You don't have enough,
that's
yeah, you
so
don't have enough faith.
familiar.
Or you have too many doubts." And I'd think, no, I'm not doubting anything. And it's not that I don't have faith. I have complete faith in the Buddha and the Dharma and the Sangha. My faith then in the Buddha the Buddha Shakyamuni was very solid and still is today. He's been a very big part of my life. But yeah, just controlled by fear. Yeah. An immeasurable amount of fear. I was just scared that if I said I can't do this, that, I'd be shamed, because I'd seen them shame people that had left the NKT before I got there. And they would often mock them, say really
Oh yeah.
nasty things. And I thought, wow, I never want to be that person, I hope that they never say these awful things about me. And that's why I just completely afraid, just fear,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
exactly
oh,
the
which is not
same. Yeah, that's exactly the same experience that I had. Every time I had a question or I just retorted, like it would be like, "Oh, well, you don't have faith. You gotta develop faith. You have to develop faith in Kelsang Gyatso. You have to do
yeah,
this and that." And yes, there was a lot of shaming going on
yeah,
of people who've left, and then when I left, and especially when I started the activism, I got all kinds of you know things that, well, that's not important now. We're not talking about me, but yeah, I'm just saying I had the same experience exactly. And we are thousands of miles from each other. You're in Australia, and I'm in Europe. I'm in Italy, so we cannot even say that it is the same group of people. It's different group of people, but it seems to be, part of their modus operandi, their system, the way they conduct things. So
yeah.
then how did you manage to, like, what happened when, after this 1 year that you volunteered, how did you manage to, or what opened your eyes? What was that final thing, the final drop? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there was other things as well. So they actually they gave me other jobs to do. So I was in charge of doing offerings 1 day a week, and in exchange for good karma. And so me just having, I really wanted to study Buddhism, and I was genuine about it. I wanted to know Buddhism. I didn't want to get involved in Kelsang Gyatso and just worshiping him. So I thought, sure, I'll make offerings on the shrine once a week, and then that became another job. And then they hit me with another job. Can you, clean the whole gompa, the whole shrine room, including the shrine, by yourself, um, once a month, and in exchange for good karma again. And I thought, okay, So they were very clever at locking me into so many jobs and roles in the center that it became difficult for me to leave, because now they were dependent upon my time and depended on my skills as well. They
And
were they were used.
during all this time that you were doing all this work for them, were you also paying for the teachings and the classes?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
And that's another interesting thing too, is you do a lot of favors for the NKT, but they won't do a single thing for you except put you down and make your life an absolute hell. Yeah. So to go back to your question, I eventually got to a stage where I was mentally and physically exhausted. I just I just couldn't do it anymore. I was starting to break down. And from then on, I started to investigate and start doing some research. I thought, what is this group about? Because they're very demanding. They're very high demand. And from that, I started to learn about the Shugden. And I thought, okay, that's interesting that the Shugden has such a bad history. And then I stumbled across ex-NKT members. I came across the group, exposing the NKT, and there was people's stories in there, and I thought, oh my God, I'm having these same experiences. This is, it's happening to me. And from then on, I also started to realize that I'm not allowed to read any other book that isn't Kelsang Gyatso's. And I also started to think, if I started to learn about Buddhism more broadly. And so that sort of opened up a lot of cracks. I was starting to find out that the Dharma that the NKT was teaching me was not like traditional Buddhism. Anyone that goes into an NKT center will not see any other books other than Kelsang Gyatso's. And
Yeah.
you aren't allowed to mix lineages. And if you do, the Shugden will, come for you, or you'll end up in a Vajra hell. And I thought, wow, this is all very sectarian and very dogmatic and very controlling.
And it's
And
not
from then
just,
on,
sorry that I interrupt, but it's not just that you're not allowed to mix lineages. You're not allowed to read authors, or you are strongly discouraged from reading authors in the same lineage as well. Like, I remember when I was reading something by Jetson Kappa himself, who is the founder of the Kadampa lineage, and I was told, well, you don't need to read these books because Geshe-la has given us everything that we need. And I said, yeah, but this book is just so interesting, and it gives actually more than what is in Geshe-la's books. But I was heavily discouraged to even read, uh, discouraged from even reading the same exact lineage. So it's not just another lineage, it's other authors even in the same lineage, which is more than sectarian. It's crazy, I think.
yeah. And that's another thing that led to my leaving is they claim that they are the lineage holder of Tsongkhapa, but they don't even have Tsongkhapa's books, his own
Right.
works. And I actually, while I was in the NKT, I brought this volume set of Tsongkhapa's own books. He's what they call Lamrim Chenmo, which is his own writing, just translated into English. Everything,
Exactly.
all of Tsongkhapa's direct teachings, all contained in there. And the NKT doesn't teach that. So, and that's when I started to see all the contradictions, and slowly I was pulling apart all these contradictions and finding out all these just blatant lies that they were telling, just lies. Yeah. And from that's when I started to, um, I would say, plot my escape, because I was so afraid of having this, telling them that I was having doubts. But occasionally, when I did allude to that I had some doubts, they would say again, "Oh, you just don't have faith." And then the teacher would just walk away. And I thought, wow, you're not even going to help me, or you're not going to elaborate. You're just going to gaslight me and put me down. Yeah. And I got sick of that too. I got sick of them. I got sick of their bad attitude towards me. I'm a human being. I'm being respectful towards you. You should have, the decency to be respectful towards me. Um, yeah, so I'm not going to stay here any longer.
So how did you leave? You just did not go back at some point, or did you communicate it to them that you are resigning from your roles, or?
I knew that at the moment that if I was to communicate with them directly that I wanted to resign, um, I knew that that wasn't going to go so well, because it hadn't for other people before me. And just looking back on the stress of um, the previous young lady that held the website position, she was the website manager. When she resigned, I was there on that day, and she looked petrified in the face. She looked just frightened to be there. And eventually, when she did leave, she couldn't wait to get out. No one ever saw her again. And no one knows where she is. So I was scared of resigning because, I was very fearful of what the repercussions would be. So, the way I did resign is, in the end, the whole center was going to the Dojo Shugden Empowerment. So all the resident teachers and along with the students of that center for that weekend, they were all going to fly to the temple, the head temple of Australia, which is in Melbourne. They were all going there for the Georgia Children Empowerment. And of course, my teacher was trying to push me to take the empowerment. I thought, oh no, not from what I've learned about the Shugden. There's no way I'm going to lock myself into an empowerment with him. So I'm glad I never
Yeah.
did that. But
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Very
So
smart. Very, very smart. Yeah.
yeah, did the right thing there. I'm very happy. Made the right choice. But I took the opportunity that on that weekend I was plotting my escape. So what I did is I went into the center. I fulfilled all my website duties for that week. I did all that was required of me. I did the offerings. I cleaned the shrine, and I just left my key to the center that I had on the dining room table, and I never went back.
Wow. Good for you.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
they ever contact you again after that? Did they ask you what's up, what's going on?
Oh, but what is interesting is the only time that I was contacted is my resident teacher contacted me about a week later, I think, and sent me a whole list of jobs to do on the website. And I thought, are you not getting the message that my key's on the table? You're the one that lives here. You would have seen the key. You knew that that was my key because you're the one that gave it to me. And you didn't even question that I might not be coming back. But actually, I think he knew that I wouldn't be coming back, but he just needed to use me to use
Exactly.
it
He didn't
to use it.
care.
Yeah, he didn't care at all.
He didn't
Uh,
care enough to call you up and say, "Hey, Luke, what's up? What's going on? What happened?
and
What,
they
what?"
talk about where was the compassion?
Yeah, that's what I always
Nothing.
talking about.
Yeah, and
Compassion,
to this
this and
day,
that.
it's all just all a lie on their behalf. And to this very day, I have never heard from them since. After that,
Were
yeah.
you, I mean, are you still friends with them on social media, Facebook, or did some of you unfriend you or
No, they just stopped contacting me.
okay.
Yeah. So I had a lot of them in WhatsApp. We used to use WhatsApp a lot. Um, and they just ignored me completely.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
happened to me. I got ignored and then I got blocked by a lot of them.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, there are different levels of their hate. I wouldn't call it hate, but whatever it is that they feel for members who leave, you know. I think when
Yeah.
I started the activism, that was a bit, I got blocked and stuff like that. But
But
so
they
how
do run away.
you,
They see me in public, which I think is very weird. Because I'm a very friendly person. I would love to see how they're doing. I would love to have a catch up with them. But they just
yeah,
they just pretend to be on their phone and they just run away really quick. And I
yeah,
think, oh,
that's
I'm sorry you feel that way, but yeah.
yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Like,
Because they're controlled at the end of the day.
yeah.
So
And they're
yeah, they
afraid
all
as well. They're afraid. They're afraid to talk to someone who's left, and the fear has a lot of layers, obviously, and they just don't want to be exposed to anything that might harm their faith, right? Because there is this big thing in the NKT is that you don't want to associate with people who might harm your faith and whatever. So
yeah.
when you left the NKT, did you have a base to go back to? Did you have your old friends, family, or I don't know. I mean,
That's what's really interesting is because the NKT is so demanding, which is why I like the term high demand group. They're very demanding. They will take up all your time. And I became very disconnected from my family. I can remember on Christmas Day going into the center and cleaning it up. I never even had Christmas with my family one year. I was never home. I was always going to the center and doing jobs for them, or, it really consumed a lot of my life. I lost a lot of my friends, um, because, the NKT just was, that demanding. I couldn't keep up with. Yeah. So, I ended up, one really good thing that happened is when I left, I really came to appreciate my family and spending time with my family and reconnecting with them, and that was my foundation. And my mum especially, she was relieved that I made the decision to leave, because she was always telling me, they're just using you. They're just using all your time, your energy, and she was right. They were using me
You
up as
couldn't
much as,
you couldn't see that while you were in, right?
because you're so controlled.
Yeah,
It's
that's what I would like to emphasize here and all the time, is that because people often say, who have never been involved in a cult, they say, well, why did you stay? Why didn't you just leave? But people don't seem to realize, once you're in, and once you are controlled like that, you don't see that you are being controlled. It's so obvious for everybody who is outside, but
mm,
you just can't see that. You cannot see that because your brain is taken over by this idea. And then you might see the light at one point, and like you did, and some people never see the light because they just are unable to, or they see the light but they use different tactics to deny for themselves what is happening, right? To just be able to stay in, because leaving is even scarier than
right.
staying. So yeah. Okay. Sorry
Yeah.
that I interrupted you, but yeah.
Yeah. So I after that I kind of just had a break from all things Buddhist religion. I just sort of relaxed and took my time. Started speaking with other survivors, listening to their stories and their experiences, and but then eventually I got back on the horse with Buddhism. But I also started studying all different religions and other forms of spirituality, just being really broad. Um, and then I really created for myself an authentic, I would say, very authentic Buddhist foundation. I started studying from all the schools of Tibetan Buddhism, of Vajrayana, and yeah, I've built it that way.
So you are quite happy with your practice at the moment.
Yeah, I'm very grateful that I've now found proper teachers, that aren't demanding at all, not demanding at all. They always, you're free to come and you're free to go, and we won't hate you with whatever way you choose. And you're free to read and do whatever you want. So I've been very lucky with that. That's been very
Yeah.
good for me. Yeah. And it's amazing too, I think people, when they exit the NKT, they should know that you don't have to stay Buddhist. And you don't have to go and reconcile yourself with any form of Buddhism if you don't want to. You can, you have complete freedom, religious freedom, to do whatever you want. You don't have to go back to Buddhism. And if you do go back to Buddhism, there's so many paths of Buddhism. Vajrayana is not just one, there's Mahayana, Theravada. It's very expansive. Expansive.
That's exactly. So
Very broad.
what advice would you give to someone who is watching this interview with you, is in the NKT as we speak right now, and they don't feel good, they feel like something's off, or they feel uncomfortable, they want to leave, they don't know how to leave. What advice would you give to someone like that?
I would say trust your gut instinct. If it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not right. And to trust yourself and to go with that feeling. If it feels really toxic and it's very controlling, get out. Get out of that environment because it's not good. And and I think to question what you're doing in the NKT, um, are you seeing any benefits from it, or are you just being told that you're seeing benefits from it?
That's an important distinction. That's a very good point, I think. Because I think in the NKT, at least that is my personal experience, and I see that it's the experience of many other people, you don't actually see any benefits for yourself. They're only the promises of merit and blessings and good karma and this and that. And even if you totally believe in these things, because obviously it's a question of belief, and many people obviously believe it, that's why they're doing it, they still see no benefit. They still, I see a lot of suffering in NKT forums. A lot of people are struggling in their personal lives, they're struggling in their spiritual life, they're just basically struggling. And these benefits that the NKT promises, if you do this and that, uh, they're not that obvious to me at all. And so, yeah, it's a good point. If you don't see these benefits, and leave aside the mystical thinking. There's a lot of this mystical thinking that, yeah, and in your next life and in this, whatever. But no, I mean, if you don't feel good, if you feel that you're being used or exploited, or you're not getting enough from the teachings, like that's what, that's what I felt at that time. I was just listening to this stuff for the umpteenth time, the same thing. And I was just completely stuck. I was not learning anything in the center. I was learning a lot more my own, just Googling things and watching YouTube videos. And that was a really sad thing to me, and so if you're feeling that you're not making progress, even if you're not exploited or you're not volunteering, and you're not doing any of that thing, you're just going regularly, paying the money, you're not making progress. Just like, what are you doing there? Even like, why are you there? Like they
Yes,
say in the NKT, life's short. This is your precious human life. If you want to make progress on the path, and what is progress? Progress in the beginning is not enlightenment. You're not going to get enlightened in 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, like they say in NKT. That is not going to happen for sure. Progress is
yeah,
that you just feel better. You feel better in your own skin, your human relationships improve, you have more peace, you can handle stuff better, you have a basic understanding of basic Buddhist concepts, and you move on from there. And if you don't have that, then it means that your path is not working, or
that's right.
you're not working the path. There's something wrong, so yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think too, some people are a bit fearful. They stay because they're scared of leaving as well, and they're scared of the fact that they might have to explain themselves. And I want to make that clear too: is if you do want to leave, you owe them absolutely no explanation. You don't have to return their calls or messages if they're asking you why you aren't coming. That's you don't owe them anything.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
that's the real difference, I think, between a religion and a cult. I mean, I can go into a Catholic church right now and light a candle and say a prayer and then leave, and the priest doesn't call me the next day and say, "Why didn't you come in the other day and light a candle?" It's none of your
Exactly.
business.
Try to
Yeah,
do
that's the
that.
real.
try to do that in an NKT temple. You know,
Oh,
they're building all these temples all around the world, but you're not actually free to just walk into any of these temples and just stay
not
with
at
the
all.
Buddhas for a second. Like it's so weird. I mean, here in Italy, in Rome, we have 900 churches in Rome. I can walk into any of these churches anytime, like you say, and just stay there in peace for a while, or like you say, light a candle, or just feel spiritual for 10 minutes or whatever. These places are open. They literally
Yeah,
open for
yeah,
everybody. Yeah,
yeah,
I'd like to see these NKT temples that they're building all over the place, if they are open for everybody to just walk in, not pay. You don't pay
yeah.
anything, you don't give anything, you just walk in and enjoy the peace. That just won't happen ever, not in my lifetime. I don't think so. So yeah,
Yeah,
good
it's
point.
crazy.
Excellent, excellent point.
And it's even the same here where I live. I can go right now to the local church or synagogue and sit in there for however long I want. I don't have to pay. I can even go to there's like a Chinese and Taiwanese Mahayana temple. I can go there and make incense offerings, light a candle for free. And I'm not being harassed to sign up.
Yeah, irony of ironies. I remember my teacher and the resident monk, they used to go into these churches here to just meditate. That's often they would meditate in these Catholic churches because it was cool in the summer and empty, and they would just sit there and do Buddhist meditation in the churches. And that is a true story. And yeah, a place of worship, a place of spirituality should be open to everybody. Like the NKT says, everybody's welcome, but that's not true, right? We know that's not true. Everybody who pays is welcome. Everybody who has faith is welcome. Everybody who is not a survivor is welcome. Like we have all these categories who are actually not welcome, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's okay, Luke. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for talking. I mean, you're the first one in this on this channel, and I think you are incredibly brave still, even though you say you don't have to be afraid. No, you don't have to be afraid, but it is very difficult, I think, to talk about these things. Like, it's not easy to talk about these types of experiences, I think. And I am so glad to see that you're doing well and that you have made so many great points, even for me, to contemplate, to understand the organization better and how this organization works, how it's different from other high demand organizations. Maybe it's not that different. I don't know. Maybe it's not even important. But yeah, you've made some fantastic points. And yeah, I thank you very, very much. Yeah.
thank you. It's been
So,
wonderful. Been good to
okay.
hear you as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye.